What's up, guys? I hope you're doing well. I got a comment on my last video asking me to do a mixing tutorial for drum and bass songs, so that's what I'm here to do. And I just wanted to let you know that if you ever have a recommendation or a suggestion for me to do, please comment it down below on this video or any other video of mine that you watch. I like hearing about fun ideas that you guys have, along with news I might not know. So yeah, go ahead and comment. I like hearing about it. So with this mixing tutorial, I've tried recording it a few times, and I feel like I've been doing too much in describing the sounds themselves, so I'm just going to be paying attention to what's in here in the mix. So first off, we have this main sound. And with the main sound, you don't really touch the mixer knob at all for the volume, you know? You want it to be there unless it's, clipping off rip. You don't want to turn this down because it's, the center of your track. And we got some basic sort of effects on it. We have portal and texture, full texture. But here we have this low cut. And what this low cut does is it gets rid of the lower frequencies, but not just for bass that might be in it. The lower frequencies that we cut out will also make room for other sounds, like this pad. Well, these vocals actually. But they're used, in my opinion, kind of like a pad because they also have Fruity Convolver on them. But as you can see, we have a low cut, but instead of, 248, it's 121, so about half. And what this does is it gets rid of the low end within it, so it doesn't mess with the bass, but it leaves enough low end so it can fill in the gaps this first loop is missing. And although it was intentional, it helps create more dynamics within the song and it helps create a fuller sound. And on the other end of the spectrum, instead of the low end, we have the high end. So this first loop doesn't really possess much high end at all. It mainly possesses these mid ranges over here. But with this second loop, it is much higher, partly because it's pitched up just a smidge more, but it's not too high because we had this cut at 14.4 thousand hertz. What this cut does is it gets rid of those annoying pitches and makes sure that we have a defined range for everything to stay in. Also, there's this halftime on it. Whenever you use halftime is slowing things down. It will decrease the pitch, which can help in some cases if you're trying to mix things and things are possessing too much of the same frequency and you can't really tell what's what. Another thing for helping sounds stand out is using wider. Now, wider is just a panning plugin. It makes it so you can pan things to both sides at once without having to duplicate it and individually make one go right and the other go left. But the thing about wider, when you push things out, you may not realize at first, is you might get slightly louder. And that's because, assuming that you haven't used wider on anything else, nothing else is possessing those outer frequencies and that outer spatial real estate, so to speak. And because, this is the only thing that's panned out this far, it has full range to just, be there, be as loud as it can be. So in the mix, despite being at only negative 7 decibels, excuse me, it sounds like it's higher up, let's say negative 2.7 decibels. And that's because of wider being able to pan it out and make sure that it has its own sort of space. Next up, we have this simple sort of vocal, slightly quieter, but it also has wider on it. It is pushed out to 57%. I like to do, 55 to 57% with, a vocal like this, or plucks or arcs, because of the same reason. It helps it stand out more, and it helps decorate a part of spatial real estate, so to speak, that other sounds may not be required. And the reason I push it out this far is because usually with plucks or an arc melody, you're probably playing more notes in a drum and bass case. You're playing more notes, so there's more to pay attention to. And it can be annoying if, let's say, I don't know, the main pad is pushed all the way out. because it feels like it's so far away. But with something like this vocal or pluck or an arc, it is a background detail, and it also feels like a background detail, but it's not so far back that you have to pay attention too much to notice it, or, just forget about it completely. It's always there. Next, I took the very, very start of the loop, and it's just constant sort of rising, and it's, lower than the vocal, but it's panned out all the way, which helps because it is, I believe, the only thing in this mix is panned out all the way. So it's a small little detail that acts like a small little detail. It helps fulfill the entire spatial real estate, so to speak. So there's not too big of a range in terms of what's being panned that's not being occupied. This rising part doesn't clash with this vocal, which doesn't really clash with this other vocal because they're all in their own little space. They're all staying in their lane. So next we have the vocal of the song. It's the vocal that's actually saying lyrics. So you want it to be loud. You don't want it to be too loud. You don't want it to overpower the instrumental in this case, because it's supposed to be working with the instrumental. Part of what you can do is, have an EQ, and I cut at 308 hertz and 7800 hertz if you listen without the EQ.
Lately I've been losing my mind. Losing hope got me stuck in time. Burning up another sunlight, but I'm still dancing in my reflection.
Not only does it make it quieter, but it takes out a lot of those peaking problem frequencies. You can, for example, turn it down. I think I might keep it turned down.
Lately I've been losing my mind. Losing hope got me stuck in time. Burning up another sunlight, but I'm still dancing in my reflection.
I think that does actually sound better. An EQ can help, again, with not only controlling your sound, but picking where it sits within your mix, assuming that you add a vocal in later. Alright, so before we move on to the drums, I'll quickly cover the bass because there's still a melodic element. So I have this 808 sort of sound. And then this, I believe it's a respace sound. And if you look here, you can see that they're playing together. Now, normally, you probably wouldn't want to do this just the way that I have it, but this case, in Serum, there is an EQ on the 808, so it's taking out all of those high end that this respace that doesn't have an EQ on it is taking up. So despite the low ends, probably occupying the same space, which I did intentionally, so it felt like a more impactful drop and made it feel like, you're getting to a chorusy part of the song. But it also leaves enough room so it feels like that this is being added in. It doesn't feel like two, random basses being thrown on top of each other. It feels like there's a purpose to having this bass. And part of that is, the space it occupies. So with that out of the way, we'll move on to the drums. So the drums, very simple. What I like to do with drums, if I'm chopping up like the amen break, is I'll take my crystalline and I will put on this preset. My favorite hit mixer hates this preset. And I'll turn it down to 50%. The reason that this is important is because if you have choppy drums, it might take away from the vibe that you have going on, and it also might just sound unfinished. If you can hear where it cuts, generally that's not a good thing. But with this, I didn't have that problem, so to speak. I wanted certain parts of these drum loops to cut out because I didn't like the sound. So we have this drum loop. And this drum loop. Off rip, you can see that this one hits here, while this one has a hit here. This one hits here, while this one hits here, while the other doesn't hit in those places. And in some places, the hits are just a little off from each other. And this is helpful for two reasons. The first is obviously it makes it sound like it's two loops coming together to make a fuller sound, but it also gives each loop its own pocket it's staying in. So it sounds like two things are working together instead of two things stacked up on top of each other. Also, this second loop, you know, that has the low cut, did that because I layered a kick. And with this kick layered with burn on it, to make it beefier. With this loop that has a kick missing the low end, it helps give this kick its own sort of feel. And it makes it so that when the kick comes in, it feels like more of a drop. A lot of mixing does help come down to vibes, I'll be honest. So we have this hi-hat, generally a quiet hi-hat. I turned it down so it's not overpowering. Sometimes I'll put wider on it, but in this case, no. A good thing though, when you are making hi-hats, is to decrease the velocity with some of the hits. You might not think of it as mixing, but it is part of mixing because you're controlling, how things sound. And with hi-hats not constantly hitting, it helps make things feel like there's more of a swing to it. So with that all out of the way, with most of the drums and melodics, we have some more ear candy sort of stuff. So we have these impact sounds, about a riser with the impact noise. Generally with these, I'll turn them down. Make sure that the one that's rising and the one that's falling, if you duplicate and then reverse one of them, make sure that they are pretty much at the same level within the mixer track so it doesn't sound off. It doesn't sound like the buildup is too loud or the drop is too loud. You want it to be a smooth transition. And then with this impact noise, over here, it helps accentuate the drop, but you don't want it to overpower the riser that you have. Finally, we have sort of ambience sounds. So I got these from freesound.org. You can go there, you just have to make an account to be able to download things. There's some loops on there. I would go there specifically for ambient sort of sounds. And whenever I have ambient sounds, I layer them really low in the mix. Look how low this is. You can hear it now because it's the only thing playing, but you're listening to it now, you're listening for it, you can hear it, but as you get into the song, you might not hear it at all. If really zoned in listening, you'll appreciate those kind of details, and that's something that you want to add in for the listener. It just makes things fuller, makes it seem like it has a nice touch. If you have vocals that are trying to tell a story, or if you're trying to tell a story with, the track list that you have or this certain instrumental, maybe you picked a sample that means something to you and you're trying to convey some emotions, picking some accurate ambience to go with it just makes the person feel like they're there. It can help make the person feel like, they're listening to something that's part of a movie soundtrack or a TV soundtrack, and they can help imagine themselves in that scene, or maybe they're trying to connect it to an event that happened to them. And if you have these sort of sounds, it'll help transport them and help the listener have more of their imagination stick out. That's my mixing advice without me trying to sound head ass. It's my first time doing a mixing tutorial, so I'm sorry if I sound unprepared or pretentious or this or that. I'm trying my best. But yeah, if you have any recommendations on videos I should do, please comment them down below, whether it's on this video or another video that you see. Make sure that you like and subscribe, and if you have any of your own mixing tips, leave them down below. But yeah, enjoy your day.